IMCC Graduate Studies Master in Management and Educational Management has come up with a unique initiative to engage students at the time of this unforeseen medical emergency caused by corona outbreak. As a socially responsible institution, we would like to connect academically with students to make good the losses caused. I, Terence Catherine Stephanie Rowelan Gapul, licensed professional teacher, first semester student of Advanced Educational Administration and Supervision under the guidance of Dr. Blair, has posted videos on the subject Instructional Leadership for Education. Please watch the video until the end. Like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Enjoy! Instructional Leadership for the 21st Century Changes in Teaching and Schooling. There are many quite incredible problems that we are gonna be facing in the 21st century and is to be the focus for education in the future. The implications that for school leadership arising from the growing adoption of the 21st century education reform movement is carefully being considered by the policymakers and scholars across the country and around the world. The dramatic and radical changes proposed for schools' mission, vision, their systems, and pedagogy by policymakers and the business makers, the educators, are deemed essential, so as to ensure a vibrant and sustainable global community. However, these changes would require school principals to step out from behind their managerial desk and into a facilitative and a contributing role, while guiding and directing educational changes in schools across our provinces and across our country. I would like to provide you with overview of dramatic changes being suggested and explained why this change should be viewed as radical and even revolutionary. With this vision for change in mind, I want to share with you a model of instructional leadership for our school's principals. Arising from this research, I believe this model will provide insights and guidance to all educational leaders of all levels as we move forward. In the past century, we've seen public schooling being institutionalized with the purpose of preparing citizens for future in the workplace and in the community. That mission for education hasn't changed in the 21st century. However, what have changed is the workplaces and the communities. Public education has been fashioned in the past was after an efficiency model arising from the 20th century industrial approaches. Mass production techniques influenced the way masses were being educated. Everything from how peoples moved to 12-step processes of schooling to how teachers have come to see their jobs, technicians armed with resources to how we actually produce curriculum to be assumed has all been influenced by dominant 20th century model. We've gone so far to see it acceptable practice to remove children from the regular stream of learning who don't meet the standard template for what is believed normal. And systematically, we have sent these youngsters to commonly referred to as resource for efficient fixing and commonly result into practices to literal maintenance of these human outliers in the educational production model. The 20th century model for education has been predicated on the need for an efficient mass processing of children to prepare them for the goal of a citizenship and work, summarizing the characteristics of that model. This is the adopted 20th century education model about. First of all, we put children in large groups and treat them as homogeneous groups of learners, and most often passively receiving the knowledge message from their teachers and books. Factual knowledge based on curriculum framework of discrete core subjects to some common testings that can easily be assessed instruments contributing into a competitive learning environment. And teachers as technicians, the purveyors of knowledge, working in well-defined grade levels, much like as assembly line workers, teaching primarily through the variations of direct instruction of principals, as middle managers, primarily responding to the complexity of running the school, using a contingency approach and school system seeking to provide an efficient quality service for the least amount of money. Those advocating for radical revision of education for the future predicate this change on the dramatically different context with which we find ourselves today. Our community is no longer just a province or a nation. Our community involves global politics, global economies, and global health and environment issues. And this requires all of us to have a far different perspective, bifocal perspective, what is close to home as well as what is further away. The only people that has the knowledge and the skills to negotiate constant change and reinvent themselves in these situations will be able to succeed in the century. We are now transitioning into what we could describe as the experience economy in much more human-centric approach. It is in these influences that causes business and government leaders to re-envision education. So, what is that vision? What does it hold for us? And how is it different from the past? This is now the 21st century integrated learning model. These are now integrated with core subjects, and these are not laws. These are integration of subjects in the lenses of the 21st century themes. Curricula content is redesigned to focus on the big ideas that transcends subject matter domains. Teach less, learn more project in Singapore exemplifies this. And even today, we are seeing these changes in our own curricula, in our own province, and across the Philippines. We are lightening up the curricular load. These 21st century skills are deemed to be taught in our classrooms. Critical thinking skills and deeper analytical problem-based learning, that is, there is a messy problem challenge that doesn't have one solution. Creativity and risk-taking for our students are highly appreciated. Collaboration instead of isolation of classrooms and students. Working in teams, becoming leaders within their own, learning, managing projects, understanding not just adversity but cross-cultural projects, working across cultures and drawing from culture strengths of each other. Communications, particularly oral and written skills, will be necessary in English and second language of some kind. Multiple literacies are also involved in civics and the new environment. Needless to say, computing ICT skills will be on that list of necessity. And finally, because people will be changing jobs so often and so regularly, career, professionalism, and a work ethic, working out of your home takes a different kind of ethic than showing up to a 9-to-5 job. Working on computers and online takes a different kind of ethic and efficacy, so you have to become self-reliant. There is a significant huge gap of the learners in the past than to what we are experiencing now. It will take us time to examine and assess what is it for us in the present that we need to reinvent for our learners and in the future. The gap focuses on the learner's capacity to learn, to create, to work collaboratively together for real-life topics. This is a sharp departure from the way we teach and learn today in schools. The characteristics of a 21st century model for education would probably include things like this: facilitated small teams of globally linked students actively engaged in real problems that require them normally to learn new knowledge but to be able to apply their understandings to produce solutions. An interwoven curriculum that recognizes the big ideas and the essential outcomes for students to achieve, while sidelining teacher-centric activities. Teachers as facilitators of learning, creating a learning environment for which the student is responsible, an active learner, and a project manager. Principals and instructional leaders actively guiding and directing the ongoing necessary changes to the total learning experience, including changes in pedagogy, resources, and the environment itself for learning. And a school system that embraces the principles of experience economy and understanding that will be financially and politically costly. Instructional leadership within schools has long been the pivotal point in the discussion of school and educational reform. The dramatic large-scale changes being advocated for the 21st century schooling actually works the past gathered reform efforts witnessed in the schools movements in the 1980s and in the 1990s. This is due in part to the vast breadth and depth of the reforms being produced. It reaches in all areas, in all domains. As you can see here, facilities are in the domains of the school and teachers, while the instruction and facilitation among the district instructed to the school, teacher, and the students. Meanwhile, the construction of curriculum from the school and teachers and the assessment processes among the district down to the school and the teachers and disseminated to the students. Active and visionary leaders have to exist at the school level. Researchers have recognized that the school principal is being the catalytic change agent within the school. This means the school principal must reduce and be systematically supported to reduce the amount of time and effort to spend on managing the school's affairs. To succeed, principals must increase their involvement, guiding and directing learning of teachers so as to become the facilitators of student learning. This suggests that principals capable of doing practices this instructional leadership constellation. It all involve with each other and coexist with one another. This model is repetitive, spontaneous, random, and reiterative. What is remarkable as principal as manager and principal as leader seems grounded in three very key points. First is their belief about themselves as being a leader. They believe they are. Second is their vision for change. They have one. And third, their level of action and engagement and involvement in those changes processes in the school. They get out and do something about it. Let me take a few minutes to describe the principal as leader working to guide teachers toward gaining the necessary capacities to become 21st century educators. There are two illustrations in this photo: principal future and principal past. Principal future is the leading force. She believes in herself that she is a key leader. She accepts and believes the belief how we are teaching children must change. However, In sharp contrast, Principal Past believes she is primarily the school's manager. It is his job to respond to issues of change in spontaneous and honking contingent manner. Thus, Principal Past does not have focus or a vision for change. Principal Future have big ideas of 21st century education. She knows the 21st century approach in education must be guided, facilitated, and occasionally directed by her. She understands that she cannot do this behind her desk. Instead, she must learn how to engage firsthand, and that will impact the teachers she leads. Daily, Principal Future will be seeing visiting teacher classrooms to assess the gap between the current practices and the 21st century teaching approaches. She does this to assess and address the real and relevant needs of the entire educational staff so as to become their facilitator to move them forward away from being perverse of knowledge. Principal Future, through her ongoing engagement and observation of learning across the school, will gain knowledge necessary to create relevant involvement and ongoing activities across the school experiences for herself and for her colleagues. As a model, lifelong learner, Principal Future learns the changes of the pedagogical and curricular designs that are intrinsic with the 21st century models. And working collaboratively with teachers, Principal Future facilitate the changes systematically. Now, in sharp contrast, Principal Past guessed what is needed in his school. He arrived with his revelation likely in one or two ways, possibly from the vocal jockeying of minority of teachers, or more likely because of a new trendy program anointed by the district or government officials. Unfortunately, his contingency approach to leadership has not given him the foresight to create the financial, systematic, or human resources necessary to effectively implement the change. His preferential managerial position has resulted to teachers regarding the changes as impossible or irrelevant. While Principal Future sees the relevancy and the value underlying the big ideas behind the targets for change, she is not wavered in her commitment to ensure the students in her school can read, do math and science and social studies. But also, she understands that students' learning experiences must be connected to the real, current, and future needs. Principal Future is a vocal champion of the future of the children. Thus, she is capable of demonstrating how important it is for the teachers to embrace change. Through her words and actions, she communicates high expectations of success for everyone within the school. She recalls the time when Principal Past told her that the best she could do was hope that teachers would know what was needed to be improved, and how he relied completely on them to take charge of that work. After all, he was too busy managing the school's business to determine if anything really did change. Principal Future did not leave important change to chance. She actively sought out shifts and celebrates with her teachers. For example, she congratulated everyone on the team when they came to understand and embed learning on their problem based onto their instructional practices, a major shift. She knew that it was time to expand their use of transformative global technologies to further enhance students' learning experiences. Meanwhile, Principal Past was always happy to see year's thematic school year came to a close. Then he could resume his routine of daily school discipline problems, parental complaints, or budget issues. He could not or even wished not to imagine anything different. However, around the corner and with the help of a hard-won, thoughtfully refined structure of schooling, Principal Future learned how to manage the complexity of different learning environments while maintaining a predominant focus on leading the learning experiences of teachers and their students. If there is a message that my research offers, it is simply this. Schools' principals, the systematically isolated middle manager of the school of the past, may not be prepared to guide and direct radical changes fronting education in the next 20 years. For successful educational change to occur, school leaders first must learn on how to become Principal Future, and then take responsibility for actively developing and facilitating the learning experiences for those varied people they lead. Thank you so much. Have a good day.